beyond the thunder and lightning, past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Good morning. You know, today, Monday, January 20th, is the day we commemorate the birth of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was born on January 15th, but the federal holiday is set for the third Monday in January. This makes me think God must have a sense of humor at best and at least a sense of irony, because today is also the day the United States is inaugurating the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Ironic, to say the least. What are we to make of this? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they take place in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that between these events and the broader historic context in which they take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is, as we commemorate the birth and legacy of Dr. King, how has this visionary, this prophet, and this revolutionary's vision, action, and ultimate sacrifice been hijacked, compromised, and relegated to being those of just a dreamer? And again, how ironic is it that of all people, Donald Trump is being inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States on the holiday to commemorate Dr. King's life and sacrifice? For insight into this, let's turn to my guest. He is a published book author, two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist, and more than 20 years of journalistic experience, former Washington Post bureau chief and award-winning foreign correspondent on two continents, as well as a former radio and television producer for Chicago Public Media's This American Life, and he's a Knight Fellowship recipient. His latest book is entitled Class War in America: How the Elites Divide the Nation by Asking, Are You a Worker or Are You White? Jon Jeter, my brother, welcome back.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You know, with your latest book, Class War in America, that to me ties directly in, or Dr. King and his work, his effort, his sacrifice ties directly into a lot of your research and a lot of your writing. But before we get to Dr. King, a story broke Sunday. President Joe Biden pardoned 5 people on Sunday, including the late civil rights leader. This is from AOL, referring to Marcus Garvey as the late civil rights leader, Marcus Garvey, and he commuted the sentences of 2 others, according to the White House. Your thoughts on the posthumous pardon of Marcus Garvey?
This is not unusual for the Democrats or for any the political party. But this is the cynicism of the Democratic Party. If people recall, President Biden campaigned on the George Floyd assassination, on reforming the criminal justice system. None of that happened. And in fact, the moment he was elected, before he was even sworn into office, he had this famous conversation or infamous conversation with civil rights leaders in which he basically backed away from everything he had promised to do during the election. That's very consistent with the Democrats' strategy for the last 32 years of running against their base, appealing for white voters, white racist voters, by punishing Black people, or at least not being seen as in league with the Black voters. And this pardoning of Marcus Garvey on his last day in office is more a part of that cynicism, trying to make amends for the fact that he's done absolutely nothing for Black people. And this symbolism is intended to sort of strengthen the ties between the Democratic Party and its Black constituents. It's very insulting actually to offer this posthumous pardon, a century later, when it can do no good, nor can it do any harm. And it's just the cynicism of the Democratic Party that really has nowhere to go, really has no platform other than a platform of racism and war and poverty for the working classes, the Black working classes, most of all.
I'm very glad that you framed this in the manner in which you did. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but using the word cynicism, I think, is incredibly apropos, because Jesse Jackson Jr. has been championing the issue of I think his number is 77 million convicted felons. They are convicted of non-violent crimes that have served their time. And even though they've, quote unquote, paid their debt to society, because they have to check the box of having been or being a felon, that scarlet letter, so to speak, follows them and inhibits their abilities to live their lives as full, free Americans, even though they are no longer incarcerated. And he himself is a felon. So I just wonder, as the Democrats continue to pander to the African-American community and beg people of color for their support, if Joe Biden had not only pardoned Marcus Garvey and Kimba Smith, the sister from Hampton that got caught up with her boyfriend, and she wound up being convicted and sentenced to prison, and he commuted her sentence as well. But if I don't say you had to do all 77 million, but there's a serious constituency that could have benefited greatly from a pardon from the American president. And that's on the humanitarian side. On the political side, it would have been analogous to Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. And for how long were African Americans Republicans? Because that was the party of Lincoln. Joe Biden, with the stroke of a pen, could have done for America what Lincoln did, and that would have driven people to the Democratic Party in droves. Jon Jeter.
But it also, in their estimation, and maybe they're right, I don't know, it would have driven whites, the constituency that they really want, whites, it would have driven a lot of whites away from the party. Because
but a lot of those felons are white.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I think their math is bad, but I'm saying this is how the Democrats think, right? They think that these campaigns, particularly for president, they will be lost or won based on the what we used to call the Reagan Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. That's who they're targeting, right? And if you read the work of the labor historian David Roediger, you know that in 1992, after the Willie Horton debacle in 1988 with George Bush running, that after that debacle, Bill Clinton and Al Gore through the Democratic Leadership Council, which was meant to be basically to moderate the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
They decided they were going to take the Democratic Party, they were going to distance it from its black constituency. They were going to be seen as tougher on blacks than even the GOP. And that still stands. And so this little, it's not even a half measure. It's just symbolism that Joe Biden pardons Marcus Garvey and a few other black people. It's just is meant to sort of just keep the ship afloat at the very least. I think their math is very bad. I think if the Democrats had replicated Jesse Jackson's campaign strategy in 1984 and 1988 of building, of growing the Democratic political tent, the Democratic Party would be in the White House for the next generation. But they won't do that because they still are using math from 1988.
You know, and I don't say this in any way, shape, or form to diminish the Marcus Garvey and what Joe Biden, the pardon of Marcus Garvey. I've had Marcus Garvey Jr. on the show a number of times for a number of years, championing this move. And so for the Garvey family, congratulations. It is something that they have been working for years, and to finally accomplish it is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But we cannot take the symbolism of this act and laud too many praises on Joe Biden for doing it, because in the grander scheme, in terms of real politique, this has been weighed in the balance and found wanting, is how I would describe it, in terms of what Joe Biden really could have done here, which would have been a significant move. Because, okay, to your point about the numbers, I seem to recall the Clinton campaign doing a similar calculus. It might even have come from Bill himself, saying we will be able to offset the Democrats we lose with the Republicans we pick up. That's by right. Moving to the right.
Right.
That math was horribly flawed.
And they did it again in this election.
And they did it again. We'll stand with the Zionists. We'll stand with AIPAC. We know we're angering the Arab community, but we'll offset that with the Zionists leaning. Well, how'd that work for you, according to the church lady from Saturday Night Live? How'd that work for you? No. Weighed in the balance and found wanting. Can you imagine the impact? T-Bone, Lil Man, and Ray Ray going to Big Mama house, going to the barbecue, and saying, I just got pardoned by the president. Can you imagine Billy and Willie and Sam, all these middle class or white collar, white criminals, felons that could have gone to the bar mitzvah, they could have gone to the Christmas party and said, I just got pardoned by Joe Biden. 77 million people. You once again, Joe, once again, Nancy Pelosi, once again, Hakeem Jeffries, you missed the mark.
And by design, they don't want to hit the mark, right? It's just they just have no imagination. You know, you can be cynical for so long, and pretty soon you really can't find your way to a real viable answer. That's where the Democratic Party is. You know, think about this, right? I mean, you pardon Marcus Garvey, and you say rightly, Marcus Garvey is deserving of that pardon. Yes. He was a great man, a great figure in American history. I would argue that a lot of later civil rights icons like Malcolm X would not have existed, or may not have existed in that form without Marcus.
Malcolm's parents were Garveyites.
Right, were Garveyites, exactly. And he was a great man. And even the blacks.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
There's so many. And even the blacks who went into the Communist Party, which really helped to modernize the state during the Great Depression through labor organizing, They were a response to Marcus Garvey, who they admired, but they thought a little bit more should be done. So in any event, Marcus Garvey, it was our modern politics in the Black community is a response to Marcus Garvey. So let's say that rightly. But the thing is, there's so much more that could be done. I mean, and it could be one thing, really. I mean, single payer health care. What would that do for the Democrats if they had, or even to say Obama had proposed a public option, not even a whole single payer health care plan, right? That would do so much.
Didn't he run on the public option?
Yeah, he did run. Yeah, of course.
He ran on because you said, what if he ran on the public option,
and then
when he got into the White House, ran from the public option.
That's right.
Because the insurance companies came to him and said, we will sink you immediately if you pursue this path. That's how we got the Affordable Care Act, which is not health care reform, it's health insurance.
That's right. Did nothing to lower the cost, nothing to improve the quality of care. And if I had been Obama, and I suspect if you had been Obama at that moment, you would have said, boy, don't you know I'm God? Because in that moment he was, right? And Joe Biden did the same thing when he ran on criminal justice reform. And the moment he was elected, backed away from it, right? But just think about this. Think about if Joe Biden, this is a simple thing, a small thing. Most people wouldn't even understand it, but it could really set the table for the Democrats in 2020. What's the next race? 2028, 2029, whatever. 2028. What if he had right now there's a discrepancy between federal sentences for crack cocaine and powder cocaine. There's no chemical difference between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. The only difference is that crack is associated with blacks and powder is associated with whites. The disparity was 100 to 1. In other words, you had 100 times the amount of crack cocaine, of powder cocaine than crack cocaine, then you would have got the same sentence, right? Now, Obama lowered it to 18 to 1, right? What if Joe Biden lowered it from 18 to 1 to 1 to 1? Right, that would have been a huge deal, right? It would have resulted in not just a lot of people, getting some relief, right? But at the same time, it would have been such a PR move for Joe Biden, right? He could have touted this to the ages, but they won't do that because they don't have any imagination. It's like W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the slave owners, the plantation owners. They just didn't have any imagination. If they had freed the slaves and paid them just a little bit, they could have expanded their monopoly over the marketplace for generations to come.
I'll go back to this point and then we'll move on. T-Bone, Lil Man, and Ray Ray, they show up. And the reason,
and don't forget Pookie. Don't forget Pookie.
But now, because when you talk about Pookie, you got to deal with Pookie and them.
Right, Pookie and them. Yeah.
Pookie and them, T-Bone, Lil Man, and Ray Ray, they show up to the cookout. And the reason I keep using this because to me, this is real.
It's very real.
This is real. They show up to the cookout where you have 15, 20 people at Big Mama house at the cookout. And they walk in waving their letter that they have been pardoned. You take the 20 people at the cookout and 8 of them go, damn, this politics actually does mean something because it just had an impact in my backyard. See, because one of the things I think that when you start to look at the numbers, not of the people that voted for Kamala Harris and not of the people that voted for Donald Trump, look at the people that did not turn out. They got 33 million people in America. Right? 33 million, is that right? Or is it, or is it 300?
330 million.
330 million. You got 330 million people in America. Look at the number of registered voters that did not vote. And look at the number of people that are of age and eligible that don't even register. 6 of them might be standing in the backyard at the cookout.
I think the numbers are generally in the area of about 100 million eligible voters who don't vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100 million.
So now you've got and you got 77 million of them that are convicted felons.
Right.
So
well, they might not be the same. They might not be the same group, but still, yeah, a lot of people who could be. Yeah.
The numbers are the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got. I'm confusing myself. So now you're getting back to the point of there are a lot of people that don't vote because they say it doesn't matter. That's what I'm getting to. They say participating in the process, my going down there on Tuesday on the 5th, it's not going to change my life at all. Why should I waste my time? Now they have a living example standing in their backyard saying this president who's a Democrat just changed my life with the stroke of a pen. An incredible opportunity missed.
Yes, there's no question. And that's the whole thing, right? Doing something that has a material value for the Black community, which, and we've talked about this on the show, Black people today, African Americans, 48 million African Americans, about 13% of the population, we own no more in assets than we did on January 1st, 1863, when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Moving that needle forward, the Democrats, through their calculations, they believe that will hurt their electoral chances. It actually would help because it would expand their voting base, right? Whites are typically split roughly 50-50 in most presidential elections, national elections, right? Blacks are the kingmakers, their vote, because we typically vote for the Democrats, although I think that might be subject to change in the very near future.
Correct.
But bringing more Black people into that tent, giving them a reason to vote, puts the Democrats on top. Donald Trump is not the most popular politician in America. Bernie Sanders probably would win that, right? But the problem is that the Democrats don't present a viable alternative to Donald Trump. And if you look at what Donald Trump managed to achieve in Gaza, right, with Israel, and I was just listening to Ali Abunimah talk about how Trump's guy just went over there and said, "This is what's going to happen." Right? We tired of this foolishness. I think a lot of people, including myself, including you, I'm sure, are asking, why didn't Joe Biden do that? Why didn't Joe Biden? This was his deal, by the way, that he actually presented in May. And Benjamin Netanyahu told the United States, "Man, please, you ain't got to go home, but you better get the hell up out of here," right? Donald Trump, his man wasn't having that. So, the Democrats just don't present a viable alternative.
And the reason Joe Biden didn't do it is because Joe Biden is a Zionist.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, how much of a Zionist is Donald Trump? Ali Abunimah seems to suggest that Donald Trump is not as big a Zionist maybe as Joe Biden is. That he has truck with Israel, but it is America first as in Donald Trump's mind.
Trump is an opportunist. Trump is transactional. I don't think Trump can spell Zionism.
Oh, I'm sure he can.
let alone be able to explain it.
Because I'm sure he can.
I can't think of any action that Donald Trump has taken as president that indicates to me a worldview, an ideology other than Trumpism, which is, if you pay me, you can play.
Right.
That's what he's wedded to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is Jewish, but that doesn't mean that he's a Zionist. That just means that his daughter married a Jew.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a great point. That's a great point.
So
Donald Trump has always been a megalomaniac, as far as I know. At least from
that's his ideology.
Yeah, it's himself. Right. Exactly right.
That's it. Okay. So the 20th, the third Monday in January is the federal holiday to commemorate the birth, the life, the accomplishments, and the death of Dr. King. I'm going to read a paragraph. This is from Where Do We Go From Here? No, this is why I oppose, Time to Break Silence, Why I Oppose the War in Vietnam. This was delivered at the Riverside Church, April 4th, 1967. And Dr. King says, even when pressed by the demands of inner truth, men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in a time of war. Nor does the human spirit move without great difficulty against all the apathy of conformist thought within one's own bosom and in the surrounding world. Moreover, when the issues at hand seem as perplexing as they often do in the case of this dreadful conflict, we are always on the verge of being mesmerized by uncertainty, but we must move on. There is so much in there that we can apply to today's politics. My question to you is, and I wrote a piece a while ago entitled "King's Dream: A Reflection of Our Nightmare." Dr. King, in my humble opinion, as I said in the open, has been relegated to that of a dreamer, when in fact he was a visionary, he was a prophet, he was a revolutionary. And I write in this piece, dreamers are safe, docile, and non-threatening. People are comfortable with dreamers. Why? To be a dreamer, you must be in a restful state, usually asleep. To cast Dr. King in the light of a dreamer allows people to be convinced that action resulting from clear vision is not necessary. It allows the oppressed to be fooled into being patient and non-revolutionary. Yours will come by and by. It allows King's dream, his vision, to just remain a dream. Jon Jeter.
You know, that's so apt, right? You can really, I wouldn't say it's a straight line, but you can draw a line between Dr. King's assassination and Donald Trump's inauguration. And what I mean by that is that everything that has happened in a political sense, including what we just talked about, the Democrat strategy of appealing to white racists, trying to out racist the GOP, everything that's happened since April 4th, 1968 has been, in a political sense, it's been a counter-revolutionary effort culminating in Donald Trump as president, right? Mm-hmm. What King sparked, and it wasn't just King, I think Malcolm had a lot to do with this, and then of course the Black Panthers and the Radical Black Power movement, Fannie Hamer. But what they sparked was, we were close. We didn't achieve it, but we were close coming up on Martin Luther King's assassination. We were close to a racial reckoning. And a racial reckoning would have been a class reckoning, right? Because Black people are the vanguard of revolution in the United States, at least since the end of the Civil War, really probably right before the Civil War, in their activities to sort of democratize the state and to dismantle the plantation system. But it's very clear that, beginning, of course, with the FBI, but expanding into the business world with Justice Powell. He was a corporate banker at the time, but he would be named a Supreme Court Justice, Lewis Powell. His memo, I think it was 1970, I think it was, where he talked about, marginalizing the Black voice, right? He wasn't very specific, but he was very clear, separating, particularly on college campuses, separating the white college kids from the Black dissidents, right? And so you can really see it was a very methodical, deliberate, thought-out plan. Richard Nixon carried it out. Ronald Reagan escalated it. Then Bill Clinton, and even Barack Obama, with his every attempt, every effort, every moment he had opportunity, he had to scold Black people. He did that, right? That was to show white people he was safe, right? That the Democratic Party was their party. So what I'm saying is that this counter-revolution, this backlash against Dr. King and his politics and his dream, which, like you say, was really a vision, right? Without vision, the people perish. That's what's happened. We have perished as a nation because we rejected Dr. King's vision, right, of racial solidarity, of a concerted effort to fight the triple evils, the triptych of evils, militarism, racism, and poverty, right? And that's what we are experiencing right now in this country more than ever. Hopefully, if the Lord willing, the creek don't rise, I'll be 60 in a few days. And I've never seen the triple evils of militarism, racism, and poverty mesh in such a cohesive and powerful way. And so, this is a moment, right? Like, I don't, the history doesn't happen. It doesn't tell you it's happening, but that's what's happening today. This is a moment, I think, an inflection point for the nation to say, who are we really trying to be? I think with Donald Trump in office, we have a chance, right? Because I think people understand the stakes. They understand in a way they probably wouldn't if Kamala Harris was in office and had been elected to the White House. I think we have a chance. I think people are starting to reorganize in small ways. Hopefully that will become a big way. But that's my dream, I guess. Maybe not as ambitious as Dr. King's, but that is my dream, maybe, is that we might start to revisit Dr. King's dream and start to come together in a way that he would have wished.
I think, first of all, you're talking about the three evils, which Dr. King talked about, is exactly where we are with Donald Trump when you talk about militarism, racism, and poverty, because he runs. Many people like to say he's anti-war, but he's talking about peace through strength.
Yes.
He's talking about building up the military, which, of course, Dr. King told us about that in Why I Oppose the War in Vietnam. You talk about racism. Racism is one of the cornerstones, or racism / xenophobia is one of the cornerstones of Donald Trump's rhetoric. That so-called comedian in October that talked about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage in the Pacific, and Donald Trump talking about the hordes of Mexicans that are coming across our border and his Muslim ban. Racism, xenophobia, and eugenics. Thank you, Dr. Chantella Sherman. Eugenics, all of those things are a cornerstone of Donald Trump's rhetoric. And poverty. What are we going to be left with if Congress approves the extension of the Trump tax cuts? And when you look at, there was a piece I read about the deal that was cut between Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Johnson in order to get the continuing resolution passed. Folks were connecting dots here. In order to get the rest of the Republicans to agree with Mike Johnson had to do a handshake with them saying, we will deal with cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps in March. We're just going to kick that issue down the road. So when you go with the Trump tax cuts and you go with Republicans wanting to cut social safety net, which the Democrats will play along with, they're going to argue over the numbers, but they'll wind up with less than there is now. To your point, you can draw a straight line. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You can draw a straight line between Dr. King and Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I do think this is an inflection point, because I think the Republicans, aided and abetted by the Democrats, I think they're going to be guilty of overreach, particularly when you think there's a very real chance they'll be trying to cut, what we used to call in the newsroom the third rail of American politics.
They always overplay their hands.
Right.
Newt Gingrich and the contract on America.
No question.
They always overplay their hands. This time I wonder,
and I can't predict this, no one can predict this, but all the signs point to a very deep economic downturn sometime probably in the summer. A lot of economists are saying in the summer, early summer. I just think this is a moment for people to start to reorganize and understand democracy is not just showing up at the polls once every 4 years. Democracy is getting involved and saying, this is what we want. You can cross me if you want, but there will be
hell to pay.
As Eddie Murphy says, somebody touch my cornbread, it's going to be consequences and repercussions. Somebody touch our Social Security, it's going to be consequences and repercussions. That's the message we need. We the people need, and this is what I think. This is the point. Really, this is part of my book, Class One America. White people have to understand they don't have anything to fear from black people. They have everything to fear from Trump and Biden and this corporate class that governs us. Their misrule, that is what you should be afraid of. Not me, right? I'm a man of peace. Most Black people I know are a man of peace. We're just trying to get through the day, right? But we have been, this if there's one word I think people should understand, one philosophy, it is Edward Said's idea of Orientalism, right? The idea that you pathologize, colonize people, which is what Blacks, Latinos to a lesser extent, we are colonized people, right? And if you understand that everything, the news media, the entertainment media, the academy, everything is oriented around Orientalism, pathologizing Black and brown people and making you think that we're the enemy instead of what your real enemy. If you understand that, we have a fighting chance. We really do.
And you said we are a people, a peaceful people. We're just trying to get through our day, and you're absolutely right. But try to get in the way of me getting through my day, right, and you will have a problem, right, on your hands. In fact, right, that was when you go back to, well, you know what? Let me interrupt myself, and I'm going to come to that point after I make this point. You mentioned the moment, and I'm trying to remember the exact words you used. I didn't write it down. Usually I do. You mentioned well, we're in, and I was in New York at an event, and I said over the weekend that there are periods in history, there are epochs, there are distinctive periods in time that are marked by notable events that in many instances signal change. And that a lot of times you don't realize you're in the moment when you are in the moment.
Right.
Usually it's upon reflection and you go, damn, that was a significant time. Look at where we are now.
Right.
But then there are other moments, and I call them Oppenheimer moments, where in the moment, that you are in the moment. Right. And the reason I call them Oppenheimer moments is because the atomic bomb, the first blast, was on July 16th, 1945. And the bomb was called the Gadget. And this was a plutonium implosion device. It released 18.6 kilotons of power. And history tells us that J. Robert Oppenheimer said in the moment, he quoted a line from Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Oppenheimer knew in that moment that was the moment.
Yeah.
And so I think as we look at this current political landscape, we look at this Trump redux. If you're paying attention to the decline in the status of America, both domestically and internationally, if you look at the economy, if you look at our war footing, if you look at the unhoused, unemployment, incarceration, if you look at your checkbook,
right,
folks, you're in the moment.
Yeah, Jon Jeter. Yeah, and I think a lot of us realize that. I wonder if it's enough, but I just think that it's like the Italian theorist Antonio Gramsci wrote in the Prison Notebooks, right? You have to hit rock bottom. I think we are very close to rock bottom. I don't think the one problem right now, though, the biggest problem right now, I'll say, it's not necessarily unique to this moment, but it's really acute in this moment, is that we don't have a news media that gives us real information.
Correct.
Like that is, and I say that as someone who has spent most of his career in journalism, but in this moment, more than I've ever seen, we are just not. People don't understand by restoring the Donald Trump's tax cuts. What that means is that we have to borrow more and more money from the rich, right, at higher and higher interest rates. We don't have it, right? It's like the old Cedric the Entertainer joke goes, "Man, I ain't got it," right? Well, we don't have it, right? And so I just don't think people understand the combustibility of this moment where we're basically, there's an old saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Stop digging.
We're continuing to
Right.
dig, and so I think a lot of people understand that. But I think when we hit rock bottom, which I don't mean to be I don't mean to be a doomer. Yeah, I don't mean to be a doomer, but I do think we are very close to hitting rock bottom. All the economic indicators indicate that we are very close to rock bottom. And of course, you can see the violence in our society now, right? Particularly the racial violence. I think I haven't done the research. I'm going to do the research soon. I think we are probably, people often refer to the Red Summer of 1919, particularly along with the Palmer raids the following year. They refer to that as the greatest outbreak of racial violence in the country. That might be a little bit misguided, seeing as how the genocide is what started the country. But I think since 1919, I think right now it's going to turn out to be the worst outbreak of racial violence, and probably for a period of over the last 10 years since the Great Recession, that we've had this outbreak of racial violence as more and more white people blame blacks and other people, gays and even Jews, for the economic misfortune that has befallen us. So this is the moment, right? This really is the moment. I don't think that doesn't speak to my intelligence. That just speaks to being, halfway awake and looking around, right?
And not woke, but awake.
Right. Not woke.
Let's not get that twisted.
They've stolen woke from us. Yeah.
I want to go back to this point, because I think as we're looking at commemorating Dr. King, and how many times are we hearing "I have a dream"? It makes you nauseous. It makes me nauseous anyway, because that to me is a terrible distortion of what the speech was about. Yeah. The reason I believe that that Dr. King had to put the vision in the context of a dream was because our reality was such a nightmare. Yeah. And so when you talked about we are a peaceful people, and then I said, yeah, you said we're a peaceful people just trying to get through our day. And then I said, yeah, but try to get in the way of me making it through my day. Right. And now you're going to have a real problem on your hands. In the speech, Dr. King talks about the fierce urgency of now. And he says to America, if you don't fix this now, there will be, my words, not his, hell to pay, because folks are going to go into the street and tear this rascal. I almost went another direction. Pastor Williams, I'm not going to do that. Tear this, burn this rascal down, blow this thing up. He says in the speech, if you don't listen to me now, do not call me later. And he also made the point, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. That's no dream, folks. That was the reality in 1963. It was a clear indictment of the social conditions in America, and it continues to be an unfortunate reality for too many children languishing in inner city schools, parents losing jobs and homes, and those unjustly incarcerated in American jails and prisons. Jon Jeter.
I could not agree more. Dr. King was killed famously advocating for garbage workers, mostly Black garbage workers in Memphis, Tennessee. At the time of his death, he was an advocate for something. I can't remember what they called it then, but it would be called the basic income grant, right? A living wage for everyone, and the more you work, the more you'd make. So it wouldn't penalize working. And after he died, his wife Coretta was a champion of a federal jobs program, which would have been a transformative guarantee by the federal government of a job to every able-bodied adult who wanted to work. Right, Dr. King was a brilliant man, but he was no dreamer. As you said, he had very pragmatic ideas for how we could improve, how we could move the needle forward for all Americans. And think about this. This is the thing that I think people don't understand. if we had done those things and we had lifted the wages of blacks, right? Instead, we went another direction. What we did was we sent manufacturing offshore over the years. And those job losses hurt the black community first and foremost. My late father was an auto worker. So, those jobs really hurt the black community more than anyone. And we were the first, because we're the first fired, the last hired. We were the ones who were initially hurt by that. The criminal justice system and its incarceration policies. The fact that we only have 1% of all national wealth, roughly 1% of all national assets in this country. Think about this, though, right? In what capitalist scenario can you deprive 13% of the population of income and wealth and it not affect the other 87% of the population? In other words, if black people were making more money, white people would be making more money, right? I'm not the biggest capitalist, but I understand that for capitalism to function, people have to have money to spend. Pardon me if I told you this story before, Doctor, but when I was a correspondent in Southern Africa, I would go to countries that used to be communist and now were capitalists, right? All open to free market capitalism. I remember I heard this in Mozambique, I think a couple of times. People talk about under communism, the shelves in the stores were empty, right? But everybody has some money, right? And now under capitalism, the shelves were full, but nobody had any money, right? Now, what does that sound like, right? That's the United States, right? The shelves are full, but who has any money? I go to the grocery store and I hear people, actually complaining out loud about, I can't afford that. So, people need to, and I think you will find this appropriate, Doctor, connect the dots, right? So they understand my income is your income, right? And I'm not even talking about revolution or socialism. No. I'm talking about a functioning capitalist system that is dependent on everyone having some money to spend. Like if white people, writ large, and many black people increasingly understood that, right, we would go to work immediately on building a new system or improving this souped up capitalist system which we've adopted over the last 30 years.
To your point about the shelves, that just made me think about who's the former Fox guy that left Fox and he's doing all these interviews. He interviewed Putin.
O'Reilly?
No, not Bill O'Reilly, younger cat.
I don't never watch Fox News, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, he's now gone to his own podcast, and he's doing all these big interviews. I can't remember his name. Anyway,
Tucker Carlson.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
So if you go back to what was it, 6 months ago when Tucker Carlson did the interview with Putin, one of the things Tucker Carlson made note of, he says, I went into a Russian grocery store and I was amazed.
I remember that. I saw that.
And not only is it full of stuff, it's full of the stuff I wanted.
Right.
It cost me less than if I had bought it in New York City.
Right.
He said, so this thing about turning the ruble into rubble and see what a lot of people don't realize, and I'm 99. I'll bet your palatial estate on this. Not only is Vladimir Putin an attorney, he's an economist. He has a PhD in economics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people, and also I use that as a joke. A lot of people, I'll usually say something stupid and then say, a lot of people don't know that. But in all seriousness, boys,
he certainly understands economics. That's for sure.
I'll be willing to bet your palatial estate on the fact that Vladimir Putin has a PhD in economics. So not only is Joe Biden trying, he's bringing a pea shooter to a gunfight. Right, Anthony Blinken tries to sit across from Sergei Lavrov.
Oh my God,
man,
he looks like a child. He literally looks like a child.
Sounds like a child.
Yeah, Lavrov is a man of such gravitas. I mean,
you don't look, folks. There are a lot of people in the world that I talk to and don't necessarily agree with. Present company excluded. But I at least have to respect what they've done and who they are and where they're coming from.
Right.
Lavrov is a career diplomat. Wang Yi in China is a career diplomat. I used to, when my son used to ask me, Daddy, how did you know this? Boy, I've been in this game a long time.
Right. This is not my first rodeo, right?
Been in this game a long time. And not only do I know how the game is played, not only do I know how to play the game, I'm finally learning out how the game gets played. So, all folks, we're being out thought.
Yes.
So to that point, when Donald Trump, when Joe Biden stood before the American people, stood before the world and said, "We're going to turn the ruble into rubble," the first thing that Vladimir Putin did was raise the rate of return on deposits in Russian banks.
That's right.
He made it more profitable, because what he was afraid of when Joe Biden said that, Putin was afraid that Russians, and this is what Joe Biden was hoping, that Russians would there'd be a run on the Russian banks, they would withdraw their money and put their money other places. Right. So what did Vladimir Putin do? Because he's an economist, well, I'll just make it more beneficial for you to keep your money in the bank.
Keep your money in the bank. That's right.
So he raised the rate of return.
Right. And people don't understand that.
And the Russian banking system stayed stable.
Yeah. And in fact, the ruble, as I recall, is stronger now than it's ever been.
It is one of the
near historic.
It is one of the leading currencies in the world.
And also, if you understand, you can say what you want about Vladimir Putin. He is a smart man. He has outwitted every president that he's been up against, including Obama. When the United States overthrew Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, he saw the writing on the wall. He started paying down Russian debts. He started investing in Russian manufacturing because he understood that the United States had a game plan of world domination, of strengthening their empire by taking it. He understood that they were going to come after Russia at some point. And of course they did. I mean, and people don't understand. We just don't, again, back to the unimaginative quality within our politicians these days, who just don't, they can't. And Bill Clinton was really, I think, the first who really, people always talk about how smart he was. He wasn't smart. He just regurgitated ideas that he had read. He was well read, right?
Okay.
He was,
okay.
But he couldn't create. Bill Clinton couldn't create anything. Neither could Hillary.
Hillary's a hell of a lot smarter than Bill.
Oh, I agree with you. I think she is, but neither one can create anything.
Right.
Neither one. And that's where we are now.
Because they are trapped. Hillary Clinton is a Brzezinski acolyte.
Oh,
Hillary,
wow.
Yeah, because Hillary Clinton came out of the what's her name? The first female Secretary of State.
Oh,
Madeleine Albright.
Albright, yeah.
Hillary Clinton is a disciple of Madeleine Albright.
Right.
And Madeleine Albright was bosom buddies with Brzezinski. So you've got. I do this periodically to let people know, folks. This is why reading is fundamental. The Grand Chessboard, the Brignu Brzezinski.
I've got to read that. Yeah.
And between two ages. So, folks, this is why I can talk to brilliant guys like this, is because I read a book or two.
Well, I haven't read those two.
so anyway, this is taking us a bit off course, but I think it is still somewhat. Brzezinski is the one. He's the framework.
Yes.
And oh, by the way, folks, his daughter Mika Brzezinski is married to Joe Scarborough and is the co-host of Morning Joe. So you need to understand, you need to connect these dots.
Right.
Why are you hearing the type of analysis that you're hearing on Morning Joe is because Brzezinski's daughter is giving it to you.
Right. And it's not useful. It's not useful for us to help us dig out of this hole. It's not useful for us to climb out of this hole. It's not useful.
Let me give you one more.
It doesn't work.
Let me give you one more. Henry Kissinger, World Order. So you read Henry Kissinger, World Order, then you read Brzezinski, the Grand Chessboard.
Right.
Now you're doing some reading.
Right. One a Democrat, one a Republican, same idea.
Same worldview.
Right.
Same worldview. And these are the guys that helped George H.W. talk about what? The New World Order. Right. And there is a New World Order, but it's not from the same menu.
Not the one, yeah, that's not the one he thought it was going to be. That's right.
Menu.
That's
they
right.
ain't ordering.
Right.
I forget one of the names of those companies that brings your food to you. Anyway, it's a new order, but it's from a different menu.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The rise of the you never hear about the rise of the BRICS countries here.
Correct.
You never read the diminishing return on the dollar as the central the most vital currency that we do international trade. You don't read about and these things are affecting us daily. And it's very much like was it Hemingway who wrote about in one of the I think it was The Sun Also Rises. He talks about the protagonist. Someone asked him, "How did you go broke? Gradually and then suddenly." That's what's happening to the United States. We're going broke gradually and then suddenly.
And now suddenly.
Yes, right. That's what exactly what's happening.
And I want to go back to we went off a little bit from the point I wanted to get back to. You talked about deindustrialization, and I know from your book, which deals with class, this is a huge yes. element. Was the industrialists and the financiers in the United States decided that based upon their capitalist ideology, they could make more profit if they sent our jobs overseas. Right. So they did that. China, Vietnam, India, they all raised their hand and say, "Oh, I'll take your jobs. Right. I'll take," because there was a time Vietnam was the fastest growing economy in the world, about probably 10 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
So China says, "Oh, I'll take your jobs." And what did China do? They took those jobs and then they bring 700 million people out of poverty, 800 million people out of poverty, out of abject poverty.
Almost 1 billion people they lifted out of poverty.
And we can't deal with 800,000 homeless in the United States. Connect those dots, folks. Yeah. So anyway, so we deindustrialized the country, and whether you're talking to Dr. Linwood Tawhid, whether you're talking to Richard Wolff, whether you're talking to Radhika Desai, they will all tell you you cannot grow your economy without an industrial base.
It's never happened. You
have to make something in order for your economy, your economic base to grow. Folks will listen to this and say, "Well, wait a minute, Wilmer. They're telling us that the American economy is going to grow at 2.4%, and that's the greatest growing economy in the world." Let me give you some economic terminology. Bullshit. China is growing at almost 6% on the jobs we sent them. 6% growth in China on the jobs we sent them. And now we want to cry foul,
right?
Because China is kicking our natural bone ass all over the world.
Right.
And you want to then exacerbate that situation. All of this, John, is getting back to your point about money, who has money, and this is very long-winded way of getting to this point. What's my point? Oh, very long-winded way of getting to my point. And that is that the Donald Trump tax cuts, we scream about socialism. Oh, socialism is evil. No, this is called economic socialism by Donald Trump giving tax cuts to the 1%. There's a huge transference of wealth that is taking place in this country based upon the Donald Trump tax cuts. He's cutting the revenue that the government is supposed to be taking in.
That's right.
And in order to and wants to increase military spending on the backs of the poor and the working class in this country. If you put that money, George H.W. told us that Ronald Reagan's scheme about trickle-down economics was voodoo economics.
That's exactly right.
He was right about that. It's not trickle down, folks. It's bottom up.
It's fascism, yeah. Trickle down is fascism.
And it's bottom up.
That's right. That's right.
Put more money in Jon Jeter's pocket, which we're all an advocate of.
Right.
Put more money in my pocket. I'll go buy a car. I'll go buy a dishwasher. I'll go out and buy. I'm not going to buy a yacht. Well, I won't buy at least a 60-foot yacht. I might buy a 40-foot. But I'll pay tuition. I'll do the things that actually stimulate an economy from the bottom up, not from the top down. It's easier to, I'll put it this way. It's a hell of a lot easier to get well water than rainwater.
That's right. If you look at Forbes magazine does a daily accounting of who are the richest people in the world and how much they have. And I think I just looked at the other day, Elon Musk has something like 424 billion. Listen to me. Elon Musk has something like $424 billion, right? That's just, he can't spend that. He can't spend half that. He can't spend.
No.
What does that benefit anyone other than Elon Musk for him to have 424? He's only going to buy so many cars, so many houses. What if you took
you can't spend that on a drunken naked binge at a bar in the Caribbean?
Right. In Las Vegas, you can't. There's no way. What if you? And this is too much. But let's say he had you put a cap on it where he can only have $100 billion. That means you have $324 billion that you can distribute them. How much? What could we do? The American people do with 320? How many? You talk about stimulating the economy. How many cars, homes, bottles of Johnny Walker Blue could we buy? You can tell I'm an ex-alcoholic, right?
No, you're not. No, you're not, because alcoholics got to go to too many damn meetings.
Right.
I'm just a drunk because I stay home and drink.
Right. I can't afford the good stuff anymore, so I stopped.
God bless Uncle Blue.
Yeah, seriously. But this is what we're faced with, right? Which is this, and then Jeff Bezos, I think, was worth like $234 billion. Just think about what if we put that money, and we can be a capitalist and say, okay, let them keep $100 billion. I would say really $1 billion, but okay, right. Let's say $100 billion, right? And the rest of that money is redistributed among us, the working people. Because here's the question that no one like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk can answer: why do working people do 100% of the work and we only get 40% of the pay? That's the one question they can't or they don't want to answer, right? And that's the question we need to ask. Not is DEI responsible for the fires that are eating up California, but why do we do 100% of the work for 40% of the pay? That's the question we need to ask going forward.
And those are the questions, folks. We're now looking at Donald Trump, and let's just quickly shift to this. Donald Trump in his first 100 days, a lot of the things that Donald Trump ran on, and a lot of the things that Donald Trump is promising to do would not be necessary if we weren't dealing with the incredible imbalance in this country.
Yes.
That the 1% have created. If there were a more equitable distribution of wealth, crime would go down dramatically.
No question.
Insurance
rates would go down dramatically.
Your quality of life in America
would improve
dramatically. And I'm not talking about the very simplistic natures of looking at your bank account and now I can go out and buy 10 widgets when I couldn't even afford 2. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your medical circumstance would dramatically improve because the stress in your life would go down. You again cry, because what a lot of people don't really understand is there is a direct correlation between poverty and crime. It's not, Black people aren't inherently evil. They aren't inherently a criminal. It's called survival.
That's right. That's right.
It's called survival. What do I have to do to get that $3.50 per pound tomato on my table to make a salad for my family? Folks, this stuff is not that complex.
It's not. It's not. It really is.
It's really not that complex. You've just been, too many of us have been convinced that it is.
Yeah.
But it's not that complex.
Right.
So Donald Trump in his first 100 days, he's going to, Tuesday is supposed to be deportation day. That's what he told us. But they're already hedging that bet. The first thing I'm going to do, Tuesday morning when you wake up, there's going to be the massive, like Dr. King said, like a demonic suction tube. Right. All of the immigrants are going to be.
Right.
What was that? Some science fiction film where you wake up and everybody's gone, and all the Black people are left. I can't remember the name of the movie.
Oh, I don't know that one.
But anyway,
tell us something that you see.
And
yet he can't do it because his donors, the people who put him in office, they don't want that. They want to keep wages low, and these immigrants are how they do it. You know, the immigrants, if you look at it historically, the immigrants that they deport typically are involved with some sort of effort to organize, right? That's who they target, right? So I mean, he can, most of the stuff he's talking, he's going to make Canada
the 51st state.
Come on, man. Come on. You think Canada might have something to say about that? And here's something else I would say too, Wilmer. I think it's important for people to understand. And back to the news that they're not getting. It's not just Donald Trump, but it's especially Donald Trump. He is fomenting this ultra nationalist sentiment all around the world. I wish and I have some friends in Mexico. I should ask them. But Mexico, which after 5 years or 6 years of Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, who was this ultra nationalist, who is the FDR of Mexico. Mexico is feeling a nationalist pride like I don't know if they've ever felt before. The same thing in Venezuela.
And President Sheinbaum, I think that's her last name,
that's right,
is picking up right where AMLO left off.
That's right. And when I say all that to say that this is not your father's Oldsmobile. It's not your father's empire, right? And people are starting to fight back. I think we're going to see that in waves and ebbs and flows. We've already seen it, right? Venezuela has been the one constant, but particularly in our backyard. You're seeing it in Mexico. Mexico is on the rise in a way that we need to account for. One way or another, we need to account for that, right? Venezuela has been an ebb and flow, of course, because sanctions have hurt them. But these countries in the global south, and particularly in our backyard, I think you're going to see some action. My guess is that you're going to see a movement in Argentina very soon because they've got a Trump-like nutcase who's in their La Casa Rosada, right? Who's in their pink house, as they call it, right? And so you have to contextualize Trump and the United States in this movement that's starting to emerge around the world. Russia clearly is, and they've been in the throes for probably the last 25 years, but in the throes of this nationalist movement that is what? Anti-USA. Look at what's happening in the Sahel region in Africa, right? Where they are explicitly decolonizing from the West, decoupling from the West. These are things we need to account for. We need to understand what's happening. And you can agree or disagree, but it's happening.
No, you can't disagree with that. I mean, only if you're drunk or dreaming or flat out tripping. You can't disagree with that. Now, we can debate how successful it's going to be. But like the sun rising tomorrow, you want to argue that point with me. You can argue that point with me. We can talk about how hot it's going to be. But we ain't arguing that, so long as we're both here to see it. You can't argue with me that, and I'm glad that you brought up the Sahel, because people need to understand that this is not decolonization. This is not flag independence. Mm-hmm. These are people taking control of their economies, resources, sovereignty. These are people taking control of their destinies. These are people taking control of their future. They ain't playing.
Yeah.
And the United States has brought 70% of this on itself.
Oh, and I think that's an underestimate. But yeah, at least 70% of it we've brought on. And had we been smart, like Vladimir Putin, we could have negotiated a handle that put us, if not in the driver's seat, in the passenger seat at least, giving directions, right? That's what we could have done.
Let us help you.
This looks to be a very hard fall, as hard a fall as any empire has suffered. And it's because of our own misrule, our own sectarianism, right? That's really, again, back to Dr. King, right? This sectarianism breeds us like a petri dish for poverty and war. And that's what we just can't seem to get our arms around, because, the United States historically has just been a place of anti-intellectualism.
Well, Jon Jeter, as always, my brother, thank you so much for your time. Greatly, greatly appreciate that analysis. Folks, this is what, in my humble opinion, this is what it's supposed to be about. When you turn on whatever news show you turn on, whatever, this is how it's supposed to go. And I say that not out of arrogance. I'm not saying we're right, even though Jon Jeter usually is. I'm not saying, but when you're able to hold up resources, and with these resources, I can give you can now understand, you can now understand the basis of my logic. Well, now we got something to talk about. We have a place to speak from. That's why I always say, John, when people ask me, Wilmer, what do we do? You need to read.
Right. Yes.
That's what you need to do.
Yes. We can have different conclusions, but we need to bring similar resources to the table, similar bases of information. That's what we need. Then we can have a conversation between two intelligent people sincerely looking for an answer. That's what's missing in America today.
Well, I won't even say two intelligent people. I'll just say two people that have read some shit.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you don't need to be Gerald Horn or Anthony.
Not too many of us are.
Yeah, not too many of us are. Right. You could be a little bit below that, or quite a bit below that.
If you read something, you can have a conversation with Gerald.
Right.
If you read something, you can have a conversation with Tony.
That's right.
You can if you read something, you can have a conversation with Dr. Chantella Sherman or Margaret Kimberly.
Right. That's right.
But none of them suffer fools lightly.
Right. That's what you need to know.
in fact, just to that point, this brings up something that I think will drive the point home. I was in class with Dr. Walters. It was seminar in Black politics. And we had to write a paper a week for him for the whole semester. And this was a time we were doing an analysis of the Reagan administration. That was our focus of study for the semester, was the Reagan administration and its impact on Black people and so on and so forth. And so every Monday you had to turn in this paper about the topic for the week. And then you had to present your paper. So one of my classmates is doing this presentation and he makes some grandiose point. and he's very proud of himself that he's made this point. And so Dr. Walters says, excuse me, you said this about this, blah, 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 and you cited this reference. Where'd you get that from? And my colleague, my classmate says, well, actually, that's my opinion. And Dr. Walters very stoically looked at him and he said, young man, I don't care about your opinion. Right. I'm training scholars here. Right. I want to know what you've read. Right. And by the way, the citation you gave, I don't remember the book, Henry Kissinger World Order, you said 4th edition. I'm sorry, there were only 3. Oh, wow. So you might want. So anyway, it's about
what did Daniel Patrick Moynihan? I'm loath to quote Daniel Patrick Moynihan, but like you said, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but not our own facts. Our own facts.
And what's the first hadith in the Holy Quran? The prophet, may peace be upon him, is in the cave, and he's meditating, and the angel Gabriel appears and says to him, read.
Oh, right.
And the prophet says, but I am illiterate. And the angel says, read.
Right.
And says that 7 times. That's why when people ask me, what are we to do? Oh, and then I think it's in Genesis where they say, and the first thing was the word.
Right. That's right.
Right. The first thing. So for those of you Christians out there, the first thing was the word. Yes, and you can't have the word. You got to read. Yeah. Jon Jeter, my brother. Thank you, man. As always, you make it what it is. And
my pleasure.
And it's pretty good.
We do our best.
There we go. That's all we can add. Jon Jeter, my brother, thank you so much for joining me today. Hey, folks, the time of the show, because I start class on Wednesday, so we're going to have to go to 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to see what we can do with that change, because from 8 to 11, I'm in class. 8 o'clock, but it is what it is. Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Dr. Margaret Flowers is going to be my guest. Been trying to get Margaret for a minute, and we found a time Tuesday. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Dr. Margaret Flowers is going to be with us. So thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episodes every day, even though the time of the show starting Wednesday will change to 3 p.m. Eastern. Please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show. We're trying to get to 10,000, trying desperately to get to 10,000, and we really need you all to contribute, because we're here for you, but we can't do this without you. Follow on social media. All the links, as you know, are below. And this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See you all again tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.